Imagine scrolling through Instagram and seeing a wedding photo that makes your blood turn to ice. The groom is your business partner, the man you've trusted since kindergarten. The bride? That is the woman you were engaged to just 3 months ago. And the venue? It's the $5 million lake house that you built with your own hands. But you aren't at the wedding. You are watching this on a smuggled phone from a prison cell. You're currently serving 5 years for corporate fraud, a crime he committed using your digital signature. That was my reality 2 years ago. My name is David. The man living my life is Marcus. Marcus didn't just stab me in the back. He smiled while he twisted the knife. He took my company, my reputation, and my future. He thought he had played the perfect game. He thought that by framing me and freezing my assets, he had permanently removed me from the board. He toasted to his victory with my vintage champagne, thinking I was just a helpless inmate. But Marcus made one massive, fatal calculation. He forgot who actually designed the financial structure of the empire he was now squatting in. He forgot that I was the one who created the hidden fail-safes. While he was planning his honeymoon on my dime, I was sitting in that concrete box, planning a masterclass in total destruction. It took me 700 days of silence to set the trap. But when I finally walked free, I didn't just get even. I became his nightmare. To understand the level of hatred I felt sitting in that cell, you have to understand what I lost. It wasn't just money. Money comes and goes. I lost a life that was 1 in a billion. It started 20 years ago. Marcus and I weren't just business partners. We were brothers in every way except blood. We met in the second grade. I was the quiet kid with the glasses, and he was the loud kid with the scraped knees. I helped him with his math homework. He stopped the older kids from stealing my lunch money. That was the dynamic. I was the brain, and he was the shield. We carried that exact same dynamic into adulthood. When we started our company, AeroStream, nobody believed in us. It was a logistics software platform designed to cut shipping costs for massive retailers. It was boring, unsexy, and incredibly complicated. I spent 3 years writing the code in a basement that smelled like mold and old coffee. I didn't see the sun for days at a time. I built the engine that would eventually power half the shipping industry. Marcus, he didn't write a single line of code. He couldn't even set up a printer. But Marcus could sell ice to a polar bear. He was the face. He put on the suits, he took the investors to dinner, and he charmed the checks right out of their pockets. I was happy to stay in the shadows. I hated the spotlight. I trusted him to handle the boardroom while I handled the server room. It worked. It worked beautifully. By the time we were 29, AeroStream was valued at $400 million. We were the golden boys of the tech world. We were on the cover of magazines. We bought matching Porsches, not to show off, but because we thought it was hilarious. We felt untouchable. Then there was Sarah. Sarah was the piece of the puzzle that made everything feel real. She wasn't just a trophy, she was brilliant. She was a corporate attorney who helped us navigate our first big merger. I remember the night I met her. It was at a gala Marcus had dragged me to. I was standing in the corner, awkward and holding a drink I didn't want, and she walked up and made a joke about how tight the CEO's tie was. I fell hard, and the best part? She fit perfectly into the trio. It was me, Marcus, and Sarah. We went on vacations together. We spent holidays together. Marcus was the first person I told when I bought the ring. I actually let him hide the ring in his safe, so Sarah wouldn't find it in our apartment. That is how much I trusted him. I trusted him with the symbol of my future. Life was a movie, a literal movie. I bought a plot of land by the lake, the one I mentioned earlier. I spent 2 years designing a glass-walled masterpiece. It was going to be the wedding venue. It was going to be the place we raised our kids. I remember one specific night about 6 months before the end. We were at the lake house. The construction was finally finished. We were sitting on the deck, me, Marcus, and Sarah. We were drinking a bottle of wine that cost more than my first car. The sun was setting, painting the sky purple and gold. Marcus raised his glass. He looked me dead in the eye. He had this warm, brotherly smile that I had seen 1,000 times. He said, "To David, the genius who made all of this possible, I'd be nothing without you, brother." I clinked my glass against his. I felt a lump in my throat. I looked at Sarah and she was beaming at me, squeezing my hand. I remember thinking, this is it. I have won the game of life. I had the best friend a man could ask for. I had the woman of my dreams. I had a 9-figure fortune. I felt safe. And that safety was my biggest mistake. Because I was so happy, I stopped paying attention. I stopped reading the fine print on the documents Marcus slid across my desk. I stopped asking why he was having so many private dinners with our investors. I stopped wondering why Sarah was staying late at the office so often. I was blinded by the glare of the golden life. I thought we were a team. I thought we were a family. I didn't realize that while I was building our future, Marcus was quietly, methodically, and legally transferring the foundation of that future into his own name. He wasn't just enjoying the ride, he was planning a mutiny. And he knew exactly which buttons to push to keep me docile. He played on my loyalty, he played on my trust. He used the fact that I hated confrontation to keep me away from the financials. "Don't worry about the audit, Dave," he would say. "I've got the lawyers handling it. You just focus on the upgrade." And I said, "Okay." That single word, "okay," was the nail in my coffin. It's the word that haunts me every night. Because while I was coding the upgrade that would double our stock price, Marcus was rewriting the corporate bylaws. He was preparing to cast me out of the kingdom I built, and he was going to use my own signature to do it. The golden life was a lie. It was a stage set, and they were just waiting for the right moment to drop the curtain on me. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It was a slow leak. It started with small things, things you ignore because you want to believe the world is good. The first red flag was a discrepancy in the server logs. I was doing routine maintenance late one Thursday night. I noticed a data packet, encrypted financial files, being moved from our secure server to an external drive. The timestamp was 3 a.m. The user authorization code belonged to me, but I was asleep at 3:00 a.m. I called Marcus the next morning. I wasn't suspicious, I was just confused. I thought we had been hacked. When I brought it up, he didn't look worried. He actually laughed. He patted me on the shoulder and said, "Relax, Einstein, that was me. I used your login because I forgot my password again. I had to send some files to the auditors. Boring tax stuff." It was a clumsy lie. Marcus never forgot his passwords. He was meticulous, but I wanted to believe him. I forced myself to swallow the doubt. "Okay," I said, "and just be careful." Then, things started shifting at home. Sarah grew cold. It wasn't an icy coldness. It was a bored detachment. She stopped asking about my day. She started taking phone calls in the other room. When I walked in, she would abruptly hang up. "Who was that?" I'd ask. "Just a client," she'd say, not making eye contact. "He's going through a messy divorce, and it's confidential." One night we were at dinner. I reached across the table to take her hand. She pulled away. She said I had grease on my fingers from the garage. My hands were clean. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a split second I saw contempt in her eyes. It vanished instantly, replaced by a fake smile, but I saw it. It chilled me to the bone. I brought this up to Marcus over drinks. "I think Sarah is losing interest," I told him. "She's distant." Marcus leaned in, looking concerned. "Dave, you have been working 18 hours a day. You've been neglecting her. Honestly, she's probably just lonely. You need to step up. Buy her something nice. Recommit." He was gaslighting me. He was making me feel guilty for the distance they were creating. So I doubled down. I worked harder to finish the project so I could take time off. I bought her a diamond necklace. She looked at it like it was a piece of costume jewelry. The final nail was the emergency meeting. 3 weeks before the arrest, Marcus called me into the conference room. He looked frantic. He was sweating. He paced back and forth. "We have a problem," he said. "A big one. The SEC is flagging some of our early trades. It's a misunderstanding, but If they freeze our accounts, the IPO is dead. Aerostream is dead. My stomach dropped. What do we do? I've talked to legal, he said. We need to temporarily move the core assets into a holding trust, just for 30 days, until the audit clears. But because you're the majority shareholder, I need your authorization. I need full power of attorney to move the funds quickly. He slid a stack of documents across the mahogany table. They were thick, dense legal papers. Sarah looked these over, he said. She says it's the only way to save the company. That was the magic sentence. Sarah looked these over. I trusted her legal mind more than anything. If Sarah said it was safe, it was safe. I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking slightly. A voice in the back of my head, a primal instinct, screamed at me to stop. Read it, the voice said. Read the damn papers. But Marcus was staring at me. He looked terrified for our future. Dave, please, we don't have time. I didn't want to be the guy who let the company fail because he was too paranoid to sign a paper. I wanted to be the hero. I wanted to save us. I signed the first page, then the second, then the third. With every signature, I was handing over the keys to the castle. I gave him access to my personal accounts. I gave him voting rights. I assigned liability for past financial decisions solely to myself. I didn't know that then. I just saw authorized representative. When I finished, Marcus snatched the papers. He didn't say thank you. He just exhaled, a long, strange sound. He looked at the papers, then at me. For a second, the mask slipped. He didn't look relieved. He looked triumphant. You saved us, he said, but his voice lacked warmth. It sounded metallic. I went home that night feeling a heavy sense of dread. I tried to tell Sarah about it. She was packing a suitcase. Business trip, she said. New York. I'll be back in a few days. She kissed me on the cheek. It was dry and quick. Don't worry about the company, David. Marcus has it handled. She left. I stood in the hallway of our empty house. The silence was deafening. I didn't know it then, but that was the last time I would see her as a free man. The trap was set. The cage door was already swinging shut, and I was standing right in the center of it. It happened 4 days later. Tuesday, 6 a.m. I was in the kitchen making coffee. I was still worried about the SEC audit Marcus had mentioned, so I hadn't slept well. I was staring at the coffee pot, waiting for it to fill, when the front door exploded. They didn't knock. They used a battering ram. Before I could even drop my mug, 6 men in tactical gear were in my hallway. They were screaming commands. Hands! Show me your hands! I froze. I was in my pajamas. I raised my hands, confused, thinking there was a mistake. Maybe they had the wrong house. Maybe there was a gas leak. Then one of them slammed me against the granite island. My face mashed into the cold stone. I felt the steel cuffs ratchet tight around my wrists, tighter than necessary. David Miller, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and corporate embezzlement. I tried to speak. You have the wrong guy. Call Marcus. Call my partner. The agent reading me my rights just laughed. Your partner? Buddy, who do you think gave us the tip? That sentence hit me harder than the battering ram. My brain couldn't process it. Marcus? Marcus called them? It had to be a misunderstanding. Marcus was trying to save the company. He must have been coerced. They hauled me out to the cruiser. The neighbors were watching. I saw Mrs. Higgins from next door, clutching her robe, staring at me like I was a monster. They didn't just arrest me, they paraded me. I spent 24 hours in a holding cell that smelled like urine and bleach. I kept waiting for my lawyer. I kept waiting for Sarah. She was a lawyer. She would fix this. She would storm in there and tear these charges apart. But Sarah didn't come. A public defender came. His name was Gary. He looked tired and smelled like cigarettes. He sat down, opened a file, and looked at me with pity. It doesn't look good, David, he said. It's a mistake, I insisted. The documents, the audit. Marcus told me. Gary cut me off. He slid a photo across the table. It was a screenshot of a bank transfer. $5 million moving from Aerostream's operating account into an offshore shell company. The account was in my name. The authorization signature was mine. The IP address used to make the transfer? It was from my laptop. The laptop I was using the night I saw the glitch. They have 40 of these, Gary said, totaling $50 million. And they have the power of attorney you signed last week. It basically admits that you had full control over these specific accounts. You signed a confession, David. You accepted liability for all past and future financial allocations. It's airtight. I felt like I was going to vomit. The document Marcus begged me to sign to save the company was actually a document accepting blame for the theft he had been committing for years. But I didn't steal it, I shouted. Check the destination accounts. Who owns the shell companies? Gary sighed. The shell companies are registered to an anonymous trust, but the initial setup fee, paid by your personal credit card. Marcus, he had my cards. He had everything. I need to see Sarah, I said, my voice breaking. My fiancée. She's an attorney. She can explain. Gary looked uncomfortable. He shuffled his papers. Sarah isn't your attorney, David. She's the prosecution's star witness. The world stopped. The hum of the fluorescent lights faded away. What? She went to the FBI 3 days ago, Gary said quietly. She claimed she found evidence of your fraud in the home office. She claimed she was terrified of you. She said you had become erratic and abusive when she asked about the money. She's testifying in exchange for immunity. I couldn't breathe. The woman I was going to marry. The woman I built the lake house for. She wasn't just leaving me. She was the architect of my destruction. The trial was a blur of humiliation. I sat there in an orange jumpsuit while they dismantled my life. But the worst moment, the moment that actually broke something inside me, was when Sarah took the stand. She didn't look at me, not once. She wore a modest gray suit. She looked fragile. She cried when the prosecutor asked her about our relationship. He changed, she sobbed into a tissue. He just wanted more and more. I tried to stop him. I told him it was wrong, but he said if I told anyone, he would hurt me. A collective gasp went through the courtroom. The jury looked at me with pure disgust. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump over the railing and tell them she was lying, that she was the one who told me to sign the papers. But I just sat there, frozen in horror. She was acting. It was the performance of a lifetime. Then came Marcus. He didn't testify. He didn't have to. He just sat in the gallery, right behind the prosecutor. He looked solemn, sad even. He played the role of the heartbroken best friend perfectly. During a recess, as they were leading me out, he walked past the holding area. The guard let him stop for a second. Maybe the guard thought Marcus wanted to say goodbye. Marcus leaned in close to the bars. His sad expression vanished. A smirk, cold, arrogant, and evil, spread across his face. You always were too trusting, Dave, he whispered. That's why you were the engineer and I was the CEO. You build things. I take them. Why? I rasped. We had everything. You had everything, he corrected. I just had a salary. And Sarah? She was never yours, buddy. She's been with me since law school. We just needed a fall guy with clean credit and a naive heart. Thanks for the company. And the house. We're going to keep the master bedroom exactly how you designed it. He winked. Then he stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked away. I watched him go. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. In that moment, the David Miller who built logistics software died. The David Miller who trusted people died. The judge sentenced me to 5 years in federal prison. He called me a predator of capitalism. He ordered me to pay restitution, which meant they seized everything. My bank accounts, my cars, my stocks, and the lake house. The day I was transferred to the penitentiary, I saw the news on the Rec Room TV. It was a segment on Aerostream. Aerostream stock soars as CEO Marcus Thorne uncovers massive internal fraud, saving the company from collapse. Thorne announces his engagement to Chief Legal Officer Sarah Jenkins. The power couple plans to wed at their private lakeside estate this spring. The other inmates were laughing at a cartoon on the next channel. I sat there staring at the screen, watching Marcus and Sarah smile for the cameras. They were holding hands, my company, my fiancé, my house. I felt a heat in my chest. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was a heavy, molten rage. It was a promise. I had 5 years. I had nothing but time. Marcus thought he had won because he took my money, but he forgot that I was the one who built the system he was now running. He kept the code, but he threw away the coder, and that was going to be his funeral. Prison is designed to break you. It strips away your name and gives you a number. I was inmate 8940. For the first 6 months, I didn't speak. I didn't eat much. I just existed in a gray haze of misery. I spent my days mopping floors in the cafeteria. I spent my nights staring at the ceiling of my cell, replaying every moment of my life with Marcus and Sarah. I dissected every conversation, every smile, every lie. I tortured myself with the what ifs. What if I hadn't signed? What if I had gone home early that Tuesday? I hit absolute rock bottom on my first birthday inside. I turned 30. I was supposed to be in Paris with Sarah. Instead, I was eating lukewarm oatmeal while a guy named Knuckles sharpened a toothbrush 3 feet away from me. I curled up in my bunk that night and wept. I cried until my throat bled. I wanted to die. I truly did. But the next morning, something changed. I woke up and the sadness was gone. The hollow feeling in my chest had filled up with something else. It was cold, hard, and sharp. It was hate. Pure, distilled hate. I realized that dying would be a gift to Marcus. If I died, he won. If I died, he got to keep the money, the girl, and the reputation without ever looking over his shoulder. I couldn't let him have that peace. I decided to stop being a victim and start being a student. I got a job in the prison library. It was the only place with access to a computer. It was an ancient machine with restricted internet. No email, no social media, just basic news sites and legal databases. But for a guy who built algorithms for a living, that was enough. I started tracking AeroStream. To the outside world, the company was booming. The stock price was up 200%. Marcus was on the cover of Forbes under the headline, "The Savior of Logistics." But I knew where to look. I knew how to read the financial footnotes that nobody else bothers with. I spent every allotted minute of my computer time analyzing the quarterly reports. And I found it. Marcus was a salesman, not a CEO. He liked the flash, but he didn't understand the foundation. To keep the stock price artificially high, he was burning cash. He was spending millions on marketing and brand expansion, while cutting the R&D budget to zero. But here was the smoking gun. To fund his lavish lifestyle, the weddings, the houses, the yachts, Marcus was borrowing money. Massive amounts of it. He was taking out high-interest loans against his equity in the company. He was leveraging his shares. It's a dangerous game called a margin loan. If the stock price stays high, you're rich. But if the stock price drops below a certain number, the bank calls the loan. If you can't pay cash immediately, they seize your shares and sell them. Marcus was betting everything that the stock would never drop. He was sitting on a throne of dynamite, and he was too arrogant to smell the sulfur. I had the target. Now I needed the ammunition. I needed money, a lot of it, and I had zero. That's when I met Silas. Silas was the prison librarian. He was a quiet, elderly man with thick glasses who read philosophy books all day. Most inmates ignored him. But I knew who he was. Silas was a former hedge fund manager who had lost $2 billion in the 90s. The money was never found. We started playing chess during my breaks. For 3 months, we just played. I never asked him about money. He never asked me about my case. I gained his respect by beating him twice. One day, he moved his rook and whispered, "You have a very loud mind, David. You're planning something." I looked at the board. "I'm planning a murder," I whispered back, "but not with a knife. With a spreadsheet." Silas smiled. It was the first time I'd seen him smile. "Financial murder, my favorite kind. Tell me." I told him everything. I told him about Marcus, the setup, the margin loans, and the trap I wanted to build. I explained that I didn't want to sue Marcus. I wanted to buy the debt he was drowning in. I wanted to become his creditor. Because when you own a man's debt, you own the man. Silas listened without blinking. When I finished, he sat back. "The plan is solid," he said, "but you're broke. You can't buy debt with cigarette packs. I know, I said. That's why I need you. I'm in here for life, kid. What can I do? You have assets, I said, hidden ones. Everyone knows you didn't lose that $2 billion. You tucked it away. His eyes narrowed. And why would I give it to you? Because I can get you out. Silas laughed. My appeals have been denied 5 times. I have the best lawyers in New York. Your lawyers are looking at the law, I said. I looked at the data. The prosecution used a digital forensic analysis to convict you. The timestamp on the key evidence, it's impossible. It logs a transaction time that didn't exist because of a leap-second adjustment that year. It's a technicality, a glitch in the code, but it invalidates the warrant. I had found it weeks ago while digging through legal databases. It was a 1 in a million shot. Silas stared at me. He went pale. Show me. I showed him the printout. He read it 3 times. His hands started to shake. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw hope in his eyes. If this works, Silas said, his voice trembling, if I walk out of here, I will back you. I will give you the war chest you need to bury this Marcus kid. 6 months later, Silas was released. The leap-second appeal made legal history. He walked out of the gates, a free man. Before he left, he shook my hand and pressed a slip of paper into my palm. Wait for the call, he said. I had 2 years left on my sentence. I spent them working out. I did push-ups until my arms felt like steel. I read every book on distressed debt purchasing. I visualized Marcus's face every single day. I wasn't David the victim anymore. I was a weapon being forged in a cage. When my release day finally came, I didn't have anyone waiting for me in the parking lot. No family, no friends, just a black sedan with tinted windows. The driver rolled down the window. It was a man in a suit I didn't recognize. Mr. Miller? He asked. Silas sends his regards. Get in. We have work to do. I got in the car. As we drove away from the prison, I took a deep breath of fresh air. It smelled like gasoline and freedom. Phase 1 was complete. I had the knowledge. I had the funding. Now it was time to go hunting. The money Silas provided wasn't just a loan. It was a private equity fund. We set up a ghost firm called Nemesis Holdings. It had no address, no website, and the CEO was listed as a generic proxy. I was a ghost. I rented a small, windowless office in the city. I didn't want a view. I wanted focus. On the wall, I taped up a chart of Aerostream's stock performance and a list of Marcus's known creditors. Phase 1 was the squeeze. I knew Marcus was over-leveraged. He had taken out 3 massive personal loans totaling $80 million, using his Aerostream stock as collateral. The banks were getting nervous because the tech sector was cooling off. They wanted to reduce their risk. Usually, banks sell this kind of risky debt to other banks, but sometimes they sell it to private collectors. Distressed debt buyers. That was us. Using Silas's connections, Nemesis Holdings approached the 3 banks holding Marcus's debt. We offered to buy the loans for 95 cents on the dollar. Cash. Immediate settlement. The banks were thrilled to get the risky loans off their books. They didn't ask who we were. They just saw the wire transfer. Within 3 weeks, I owned Marcus. I owned his house, his cars, and his freedom. But he didn't know it yet. To him, he just owed the bank. He didn't know the bank had sold his paper to his worst enemy. Now, I needed to trigger the default. The loan agreement had a clause. If Aerostream's stock price dropped by 15% in a single week, the lender, me, could demand immediate repayment of the full principal. I had to tank the stock of the company I built. It hurt, but it was necessary surgery. I still knew the back end of Aerostream better than anyone. I knew that Marcus had fired the entire QA team to save money. The software was buggy. It was fragile. All I needed was to shine a light on it. I didn't hack anything. That would be illegal. I simply wrote a detailed white paper and an anonymous technical analysis, highlighting a critical security flaw in the current version of Aerostream. I posted it on a major developer forum. I sent copies to tech journalists. The headline, "Is Aerostream's logistics grid vulnerable to a total shutdown?" The panic was instant. Major clients read the report and freaked out. Walmart paused their contract. FedEx launched an internal review. On Monday morning, Aerostream stock opened at $45. By Wednesday, it was trading at $36, a 20% drop. Marcus was on CNBC, sweating through his makeup, trying to calm investors. "It's a minor patch issue," he stammered. "We have it under control." He didn't have it under control. He was bleeding. On Friday afternoon at 4:59 p.m., I pulled the trigger. I had my lawyer send the formal notice to Marcus's personal email. Subject: Notice of default. Immediate payment required. Dear Mr. Thorne, due to the recent volatility in pledged collateral, arrow ticker, the covenants of your loan agreement have been breached. Nemesis Holdings, the current holder of your debt obligations, hereby demands immediate repayment of the outstanding balance, $82,400,000. You have 48 hours to remit payment in full. I sat in my office, drinking a cheap coffee, visualizing the moment he opened that email. 20 minutes later, my burner phone rang. It was a number I knew by heart. Marcus. I let it ring twice. Then I answered, using a voice modulator that deepened my tone. Nemesis Holdings, I said. Who is this? Marcus screamed. He sounded hysterical. Who are you people? Why do you have my loan? We purchased the debt, Mr. Thorne, and we want our money. Monday, 9 a.m. I don't have $80 million in cash, he shrieked. You can't do this. I'll sue you. Read the contract, Marcus, I said, slipping up and using his first name. Clause 4. Section B. If you default, we have the right to seize all pledged assets. That includes your shares and your real estate. Who is this? He whispered. The rage was replaced by fear. How do you know the contract that well? I hung up. Saturday was silent. Sunday was silent. He was scrambling. I knew he was calling every contact he had, begging for a lifeline. But nobody catches a falling knife. Monday morning, 9 a.m. I walked into the Aerostream headquarters. I wasn't wearing a suit. I was wearing jeans and a black t-shirt. I walked past the security guard who used to high-five me. He didn't recognize me at first. Then his jaw dropped. Mr. Miller? I'm here for the board meeting, I said. I walked straight to the conference room, the glass-walled room where he stole my life. I pushed open the doors. Marcus was there. Sarah was there. A team of expensive lawyers was there. They all stopped talking. Marcus looked like he had seen a ghost. He stood up, knocking his chair over. David? What are you doing here? Security! Sit down, Marcus, I said calmly. I tossed a folder onto the table. It slid across the mahogany and hit his hands. I'm not David Miller, the inmate, I said. I'm the managing director of Nemesis Holdings. I own your debt. And as of 9:01 a.m. this morning, since you failed to pay, I own your shares, which means I own this company. The room went dead silent. Sarah looked at Marcus, her eyes wide with horror. That's impossible, Marcus sputtered. You're broke. You're a felon. And you, I said, leaning in, are trespassing in my building. But then came the twist. Sarah stood up. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked at Marcus, then at me, and she smiled. A cold, calculating smile. Well played, David, she said. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a document. But you missed one thing, she said. Marcus doesn't own the voting rights to those shares anymore. He transferred them to a spousal trust last week to protect them from creditors, to protect them from you. She slid the paper toward me. I control the board, David, not Marcus. And I'm not selling. My blood ran cold. I had checkmated Marcus, but I had forgotten that the queen is the most dangerous piece on the board. Sarah hadn't just betrayed me. She had prepared for his failure too. She was the real villain, and she was still holding the keys. Sarah sat back, looking like a queen who had just ordered an execution. She tapped her manicured fingernails on the table. You can seize the furniture, David. You can seize Marcus's car. But the voting shares are locked in an irrevocable trust. You can't touch the board. You can't touch us. Now get out before I call the police for corporate espionage. Marcus let out a breathless, hysterical laugh. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. She got you, Dave. God, she got you good. You thought you could just waltz in here with your prison money? You're an amateur. I stood there looking at the two people who had stolen my life. They looked so confident. They thought the law was a shield they could hide behind. They didn't realize that I had spent 2 years studying the cracks in that shield. I started to laugh. It was a low, dry sound. What's so funny? Marcus snapped, his smile fading. You, Marcus, I said. And you, Sarah. You're right. The trust is solid. I can't break it. I can't take the company through the debt default. You win that round. I walked over to the window and looked out at the parking lot. I could see flashing lights reflecting off the glass of the building next door. But you're forgetting who backed me, I said softly. Silas didn't just give me money. Silas gave me access. I turned back to face them. Do you remember the bank you used to frame me? The First Merchant Bank of the Grenadines? It's a small private institution. Very discreet. No questions asked. Perfect for hiding $5 million? Marcus went pale. So what? So, I continued, last week, Nemesis Holdings didn't just buy your debt here in America. We bought the First Merchant Bank of the Grenadines. We own it. We own the servers. We own the records. Sarah stopped tapping her fingers. And guess what we found in the deleted archives? I asked. We found the original chat logs between the bank manager and his VIP clients. Clients named Marcus T. and Sarah J. Esk. I pulled a USB drive from my pocket and set it gently on the table. It's all there, I said. The instructions to frame me, the timeline, the payments to the forensic accountant who falsified the report against me. And, Sarah, the emails where you explicitly coordinated your testimony to ensure my conviction. Sarah stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. That's inadmissible. It's fruit of the poisonous tree. You obtained it illegally. No, I corrected her. I own the bank. It's my data. And under the Patriot Act, financial institutions are required to report suspicious activity involving money laundering. I didn't hack you, Sarah. I filed a suspicious activity report with the Department of Justice this morning. You're lying, she whispered. Am I? I pointed to the door. The double doors swung open. But it wasn't security. 6 federal agents and windbreakers walked in. The lead agent was the same man who had arrested me 3 years ago. He looked at me, gave a curt nod, and then looked at Marcus. Marcus Thorne, the agent said. You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, perjury, and conspiracy. Marcus slumped into his chair, putting his head in his hands. But the agent wasn't done. He turned to Sarah. Sarah Jenkins, he said, your immunity deal is hereby revoked due to verified perjury and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. No, Sarah screamed. She lost all her composure. She lunged toward the table to grab the USB drive, but an agent intercepted her, spinning her around and cuffing her hands behind her back. David, tell them. We can make a deal. I can sign the trust over to you. Just tell them to stop. I walked up to her. I looked into her eyes, the same eyes I used to wake up to. I saw terror. I saw desperation. I don't want the trust, Sarah, I said, my voice ice cold. And I don't want a deal. I want you to have the same view I had for 3 years. Concrete and bars. As they dragged them out, Marcus looked back at me. He was crying. David, please. We're brothers. Who's going to run the company? It'll collapse without us. I fixed my cuffs and looked at the empty boardroom. It won't collapse, I said to the empty air, because I already hired a new CEO, me. I sat down in Marcus's chair. It was still warm. I spun it around to face the window. I watched as they shoved Marcus and Sarah into separate SUVs. I had my company back, I had my name back, but I wasn't done yet. There was one final thing I had to do to make sure they never, ever recovered. The trial was the most satisfying show on earth. Without the immunity deal, Sarah and Marcus turned on each other like starving wolves. Marcus testified that Sarah masterminded the legal framework. Sarah testified that Marcus coerced her with physical threats. They tore each other apart on the stand, destroying whatever credibility they had left. The jury didn't buy any of it. Because I owned the bank and I owned the debt, I was the primary victim in the civil suit that followed the criminal trial. I stripped them of everything. I took the offshore accounts, the Porsches, the jewelry, and even Marcus's collection of vintage watches. I left them with absolutely nothing but court-appointed lawyers and a mountain of legal fees they couldn't pay. The judge was merciless. Marcus was sentenced to 15 years for fraud and embezzlement. Sarah, because she was an officer of the court who used her license to commit a crime, got 18 years. As the bailiff led them away, they didn't look at me with anger anymore. They looked at me with regret. They looked at me and realized they had traded a golden life for a concrete box, all because they got greedy. But there was one last loose end. The lake house. Technically, since Nemesis Holdings seized their assets, I owned the house again. I drove out there one last time. It was a beautiful day. The sun was hitting the glass walls just like it did in my dreams. I walked through the empty rooms. I saw the spot on the deck where Marcus toasted to our friendship. I didn't move in. I couldn't. The air was poisoned with their memory. I called a demolition crew the next morning. I stood there and drank a coffee while a bulldozer crushed the glass walls. I watched the roof collapse. I watched the master bedroom turn into a pile of rubble. It cost me $5 million to build and $10,000 to destroy. And it was worth every penny. I didn't sell the land. I donated it to the state to be turned into a public park. Now, anyone can enjoy the view that they tried to steal for themselves. I visited Silas yesterday. He's living in a nice cottage on the coast, managing the charitable wing of Nemesis Holdings. We played a game of chess. He beat me. "You look different," he told me. "Lighter." "I am," I said. "I'm back at Aerostream now. We just launched the new security patch. The stock is higher than ever, but I work different hours now. I leave at 5 p.m. I trust fewer people, and I check every single line of code myself." Marcus and Sarah thought they were playing a game of chess against a pawn. They didn't realize that when a pawn makes it to the other side of the board, it becomes a queen, and the queen cleans the board. They spent a lifetime chasing gold, but they forgot the first rule of construction. If you build your castle on a foundation of lies, all it takes is one man with a sledgehammer to bring it all down. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, or you might miss the next story. Trust me, you won't want to sleep on it.